After her mom died, husband threw wife and their twins girl out to marry her best friend. Unaware she owned the company, signing his $900 million deal, he didn't just walk out. The night after the memorial, Marcus slammed the front door, tossed a manila envelope on the table. Temporary separation, a prenup excerpt, and a small check. Then told Alara to be gone by morning. Beside him stood Chloe, Ilara's best friend since college, watching with a quiet smirk. Chloe and I are getting married. I'm days away from a $900 million signing with Helios. I won't risk domestic drama. Those were his words as he dragged the twins' little suitcases to the porch and locked the door. Rain hammered the steps. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit. Ava wrapped her arms around Alara's leg. From the upstairs window, Chloe's silhouette stood beside Marcus, laughing. He thought she was finished, but what he never knew was this. The company he bragged he would conquer, Helios, already belonged to the woman he threw out. Hours earlier, Ilara's phone had pinged. Orion Group, signing prep, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Helios Holdings, chairwoman. Her mother's gold pen waited on the desk. The succession papers were already signed. His big deal was walking straight into her boardroom. Sometimes the ones you discard become the ones you cannot escape. This isn't just betrayal. It's the moment a quiet signature turns grief into precision, and a $900 million boast becomes a trap. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Alara's voice fade again. Click subscribe to stand with every mother and child forced out and every survivor who chose to rise. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. The sound of laughter died in the walls of the house that once felt alive. Paper plates, half-eaten casseroles, and wilting flowers cluttered the dining table. Evidence of sympathy that left as quickly as it came. The smell of lilies mixed with candle wax hung heavy in the air. Laura Hale stood by the window, still in her black dress. 34 years old, graceful but worn thin, she had the quiet poise of someone who'd spent her life holding everyone else together. Her mother had called her the anchor. Tonight, the anchor had nothing left to hold. From the hallway came the soft voices of her daughters. "Mommy, can Nana see us from heaven?" 5-year-old Mia asked, clutching her twin sister Ava's hand. The girls were identical, except for the small scar above Mia's eyebrow. Alara forced a tender smile. "She can, sweetheart. She always could." Her voice trembled as she tucked them under the quilt her mother had knit years ago. Each stitch held a memory. Warm mornings, gentle advice, lessons whispered in kitchens. When the girl's breathing steadied, she lingered by the doorway. The house was silent except for the ticking clock. For the first time in weeks, there were no nurses, no machines, no calls from the hospital. Just absence. On the desk beside her, a velvet folder rested among condolence cards. The handwriting on the front froze her breath. To be opened after. Her mother's writing, elegant and sharp, like everything she did. Ilara opened it slowly, afraid of what after truly meant. In the inside were several documents bound in a red ribbon, stamped and notarized. The heading read, Helios Holdings, Succession Addendum. Her eyes widened as she read, I, Eleanor Pierce, hereby appoint my daughter, Alara Pierce Hale, as controlling owner and acting chairwoman of Helios Holdings, effective immediately. Retroactive 6 months from this date. She blinked hard. 6 months ago. That was when her mother's health started failing. When Alara began spending nights in hospital rooms, pretending to answer work emails that were really directives to Helios's board. A faint flashback flickered, her mother's frail hand guiding hers over a signature line. Never let anyone, not even the person you share a bed with, decide your worth, her mother had whispered. Power is quiet, my dear. Use it that way. Ilara touched the seal at the bottom. Her mother had kept this secret, passing the company to her quietly, protecting her from the greedy curiosity of others, including Marcus. Her phone chimed. A reminder popped up. Orion Group, signing prep. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Chairwoman, Helios Holdings. The title made her throat tighten. Marcus had been bragging for weeks about an upcoming $900 million deal between Orion Group, his company, and Helios Holdings. He said it would change their lives forever. He never once mentioned her mother's company by name when talking about it to her. Ilara now understood why her mother insisted on privacy clauses and proxy directors. No public filings tied Ilara's name to Helios. Marcus, blinded by arrogance, never thought to look beyond appearances. He thought she was just the grieving daughter of a dying woman. She picked up her mother's old fountain pen, the one with the Helios crest engraved in gold. Her reflection in the glass case was steady, calm. "I'll make you proud, Mom," she whispered. The twins stirred softly in their beds as Ilara gathered the folder, slipping it into a drawer. She straightened the blanket one last time, letting her hand rest on the warm fabric. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the ache, the loneliness pressing against her chest. Then came the sound. A key rattled in the front door. Ilara's breath caught. The twins' room was down the hall. She stepped quickly into the living room. The lock turned twice, heavy and deliberate. The door creaked open. From the darkness beyond came a familiar voice, cool, confident, impatient. "Hope you haven't unpacked much," Marcus said. His tall frame filled the doorway. Suit still on, tie loosened, the faint scent of expensive whiskey clinging to him. He dropped his keys on the table and looked at her, eyes already distant. "We need to talk." Ilara's fingers brushed the drawer where the velvet folder now rested, hidden. Her expression didn't change, but her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Whatever came next would change everything. Some goodbyes come with flowers. Others begin with a key turning in the lock. The front door slammed open so hard it rattled the picture frames. Ilara spun around, clutching the edge of the table. Marcus Hale, her husband of 8 years, stepped in first, tall, polished, and cruelly composed. The faint smell of expensive whiskey followed him like arrogance. Behind him came Chloe Rivers, Ilara's best friend since college, the woman who had held her hand through childbirth, who knew her mother's favorite flowers, who had once promised, "I'll always protect your girls like they're mine." But now Chloe stood a step behind Marcus, wearing a smirk that didn't belong in a house still draped in mourning. Marcus dropped a manila envelope onto the coffee table. Papers spilled slightly, temporary separation, prenup excerpts, and a check with his neat, detached handwriting. For the kids, short term. The sound of the checkbook tearing seemed louder than thunder. Ilara's voice came out steady but faint. "You came with her?" Marcus loosened his tie, ignoring her tone. "I came with clarity. You've been off balance since your mother passed. It's affecting the girls, the house, everything." He gestured around as if grief was a stain on the furniture. Ilara stood still. "You're saying this tonight? In front of her?" Chloe crossed her arms, lips painted deep red. "He didn't plan to, Ilara. But someone has to tell you the truth. You've been living in your mother's shadow for too long." The words struck harder than any slap. Ilara's gaze sharpened. Briefly, but she kept her composure. Marcus leaned forward, his tone suddenly businesslike. "I've been patient, but I can't build a future with someone drowning in the past. Chloe and we're getting married, quickly. I can't have any domestic mess during the Orion Helios signing." Ilara blinked slowly. "You mean your $900 million deal?" He smiled, mistaking her calm for defeat. "Exactly. Orion's about to make history, and I'm the man making it happen. You think those old Helios suits know how to negotiate? They'll crawl to my terms." Ilara's eyes flickered toward the Helios crest engraved on her mother's gold pen on the side table. The faintest smile touched her lips, gone before he noticed. "I see," she said softly. He took her silence as surrender. "You and the twins can leave by morning. The house will be in my name after the merger. I'll arrange something smaller for you. Chloe and will handle the rest." Chloe looked around as if appraising what would soon be hers. "We'll redecorate," she said lightly. "The energy here is too sentimental." Ilara looked at her, really looked. "You stood beside me at my wedding." Chloe's eyes didn't flinch. "And now I'll stand beside him at mine." For a moment, everything went still. The ticking clock stopped meaning anything. The laughter of her twins from the bedroom faded. The air seemed to fold around Ilara's grief, hardening it into something unbreakable. She finally whispered, "Then I wish you both the best." Marcus frowned, unsure. "That's it? No fight?" No scene? No, she said, voice steady as steel. You've already given me everything I need. Her calm unnerved him, but he shrugged it off. Good. Don't make this harder than it has to be. He turned to leave, taking Chloe's hand as if she were already his wife. Alara's gaze followed them until the door closed. Then, nothing. Just silence. It was an hour later when Marcus's cruelty took its final form. Rain started to pour, heavy and cold. The twins woke crying from the thunder. Marcus returned, his car engine idling outside. You need to go now, he barked from the doorway, voice raised over the storm. I've arranged for a driver. I don't want press seeing boxes tomorrow. Marcus, she said quietly. The girls are asleep. He didn't care. He dragged their small suitcases to the porch, tossing them beside her. Then wake them up. I'm not repeating myself. Ava's tiny arms wrapped around her mother's leg, terrified. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit. Daddy, where are we going? Marcus didn't even look at them. With Mommy, he muttered. I have a meeting. The rain hit Alara's face like pins as she stepped outside, holding both girls close. Her clothes soaked instantly, but she didn't move until the door shut behind her. The locks clicked, a sound colder than the storm. From the window above, Chloe's silhouette appeared beside Marcus's. She was laughing at something he said. The girls shivered and Alara knelt between them, pulling the blanket tighter around their shoulders. It's okay, babies, she murmured. This is just the end of one chapter. They climbed into the waiting car, headlights cutting through the rain. As the driver pulled away, Alara didn't cry. She looked back once, at the house, at the two shadows inside, and whispered something the wind carried away. The news spread quietly among their circle. Marcus Hale had married Chloe Rivers in a private garden ceremony. Photos leaked online, her white dress, his smug grin, the caption, Orion Group CEO celebrates new beginnings as company approaches historic $900 million deal with Helios Holdings. But no one noticed the quiet woman watching the article on her phone from a small apartment, her twins asleep beside her. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable. She opened her contacts, scrolled to one name, and typed a short message. John? He took the bait. See you 8:30. Alara set the phone down, closed her eyes, and let the storm outside fade into silence. Some storms wash everything away. Others clear the path for what's coming next. The night air was still heavy from the storm. Alara moved quietly through the small apartment, her every motion deliberate. A single lamp cast soft gold light over the packed bags on the floor, clothes folded tight, the twins' toys tucked between them. She didn't cry. She hadn't since the rain. On the kitchen counter sat her laptop, open to a folder labeled Orion, expense variances. A USB drive sealed with red tape waited beside it. The label was handwritten in her mother's steady cursive. Her fingers hovered over the laptop keyboard, but instead of typing, her mind pulled her backward, to the moment she had first seen this coming. 2 weeks earlier, dinner for two, crystal glasses, candles, the faint hum of jazz. Marcus looked like a man rehearsing success, phone in one hand, steak knife in the other. Alara had planned every word. If Orion's numbers ever waver, would you protect your team first? Marcus didn't even look up. Loyalty is for people who can't count. He smiled to himself, slicing into his meal. In business, you move with the money. That's survival. She had smiled faintly, the picture of a supportive wife. Inside, she felt the last trace of love fade. He noticed nothing, too busy explaining how he would soon be sitting across from those Helios fossils, reshaping their empire. That was the night Alara realized what he was, and that realization became her plan. A few days later, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and flowers. Alara sat by her mother's bed, reviewing reports on her Helios-stamped laptop. Chloe entered with coffee and sympathy. You should rest, Alara, Chloe murmured, placing a hand on her shoulder. But her gaze drifted, quick and sharp, to the laptop screen, the faint Helios watermark in the corner. Chloe smiled too easily. Still working? Even here? Alara closed the lid slowly. It helps me breathe, she said. That moment replayed now in Alara's mind, the flicker of curiosity in Chloe's eyes, a tiny spark of greed, unnoticed then, clear now. Back in the present, Ilara zipped the girl's overnight bag and straightened the room. The twins were asleep on the couch, wrapped in one blanket. She picked up a framed photo of her wedding day, Marcus's arm around her, Chloe beside them as bridesmaid. Her stomach twisted. She set it down. The only picture she kept was one of her and her mother, taken years ago at the Helios building's ribbon cutting. Two women who built something together, brick by brick, while everyone underestimated them. Ilara slid the USB into the hidden pocket of her bag. It held everything. Records of Orion's shady expense trails, inconsistencies in Marcus's budgets, files she'd been collecting for months. She hadn't meant to use them against him. Not then. But now, they were her insurance. Before turning off the light, she looked up at the ceiling. A small black dot blinked near the corner, one of the landlord's old security cameras. Her breath caught. Had Marcus installed new ones in the house before she left? Had Chloe? The tiny red light blinked again, steady and alive. Ilara stepped closer, staring at her own reflection in the lens. "If you're watching," she whispered, "watch closely. You'll want to see how this ends." She unplugged the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. The twins stirred softly but didn't wake. Outside, a car engine idled somewhere in the night, and Ilara's phone vibrated once on the counter, a reminder from her calendar. Helios board, emergency prep, 8:30 a.m. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket and looked back at her sleeping daughters. Tomorrow they'll learn who their mother really is, she thought. The red camera light flickered once more. Then it went out. Some secrets hide behind glass screens, some behind boardroom doors. Ilara was about to walk into both. The night outside was silent, but inside the apartment, light glowed from a dozen screens. Ilara sat at the sleek kitchen table, her expression calm and unreadable. The twins were asleep in the next room, small shapes under matching quilts. Their soft breathing was the only proof of peace left in her life. This place wasn't home, it was precision. White walls, organized shelves, a faint scent of cedar. It wasn't a hideout, it was a command center. She slid a small hardware key into her laptop and entered a code. The screen blinked once, then dozens of secure files opened like the quiet click of dominoes falling. Helios secure access granted. A new window appeared. Secure conference, encrypted channel active. 3 small faces appeared on the screen, each in their own corner of the world. John Everett, Helios's longtime corporate attorney, looked weary but focused. He had been her mother's legal shield for decades, and now, quietly, hers. Priya Nair, the forensic accountant, had sharp eyes behind thin glasses. She'd handled Helios's compliance team during several mergers. Ken Douglas, the chief of security, broad-shouldered, calm, and loyal, had known Ilara since she was a teenager visiting her mother's offices. John spoke first. "Ilara, we heard about Marcus's wedding. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't be. I needed him to show his hand." Ken leaned closer to the camera. "You're safe now, right? Location locked?" "Safe enough," Ilara said. "Now we work." She opened a file labeled Orion Integrity Review, Priority. Her tone sharpened. "Begin the Orion Internal Audit Extension. Trigger the vendor compliance pull. Priya, cross-match Marcus Hale's expense accounts with procurement records. Any irregularities, flag immediately." Priya typed fast. "Already started. There are inconsistencies. Consulting fees paid to non-existent vendors, duplicated invoices. He's covering gaps, sloppy ones." Ilara leaned forward. "He thought Helios wouldn't see them. He's wrong." John adjusted his glasses. "This could justify a Clause 12.4 audit. Pre-signing, preemptive. It'll freeze Orion's access until you clear it." Ilara nodded. "Do it. No one tells Marcus or his board yet. He'll find out the way the rest of the world does." Her voice softened slightly as she looked at her mother's framed photo beside the laptop. "She warned me years ago about Orion's tactics. Said if a counterparty negotiator is compromised." Priya finished the sentence quietly, quoting the Helios M&A policy written by Eleanor Pierce herself. "Acquire, don't partner." Ilara smiled faintly. "Exactly." For a few moments, the only sound was the steady hum of processors and the soft tapping of keys. The plan was in motion. John cleared his throat. "You're not doing this out of anger, are you?" Ilara looked directly into the camera. No, I'm doing it out of structure. He built his career lying about loyalty. My mother built a system to expose men like him. I'm just finishing the equation. Ken's monitor flickered. Hold on. I'm patching into the Orion compliance server. There's a mirrored feed. Someone else tried accessing these same files last month. Who? Alara asked. Ken typed, his fingers moving quickly. Trace shows a hotel Wi-Fi. 2 months ago. He paused. Under Chloe Rivers' name. The air in the room changed. Ilara sat back, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Pull the footage. Seconds later, a grainy lobby video filled the screen. Marcus and Chloe walked in together, laughing. He carried a briefcase. She handed him a folder with Helios's watermark faintly visible on its cover. John muttered, That's corporate espionage, Ilara. She leaked something. Ilara's pulse stayed steady. No, she said slowly. She stole something she didn't understand. Let her think it matters. I'm not done setting the board yet. The twins shifted in their sleep, one of them murmuring softly. Ilara's voice gentled for a moment, the calm before another storm. When you've both had everything taken, the only thing left to lose is fear. Priya looked worried. What's the next move? Ilara closed the file and stood. Schedule the Helios boardroom for 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure security knows exactly who enters and leaves. Ken nodded. Already on it. But before the call ended, his screen flashed red. Wait, Ilara, there's something else. You should see this. He brought up another feed. It was live. A camera view of Marcus's office. The door slightly open, voices inside. Ken zoomed in, adjusting the sound. Marcus's voice was unmistakable, arrogant, and confident. Tomorrow's the day, Chloe. Once the ink dries, Helios is finished. We'll be untouchable. Ilara didn't blink. No, she whispered. You'll be mine. The screen flickered once, capturing Chloe's hand resting on Marcus's chest. Ilara stared at them. Two people who thought they had won. Her reflection in the dark screen looked calm, dangerous, and certain. Morning was coming, and with it, reckoning. The video froze on Marcus and Chloe's faces, caught mid-laughter, their bodies close, their betrayal undeniable. The flicker of the pause footage lit Ilara's calm, expressionless face. Ken, she said evenly, trace the first time they met like this. Ken's fingers flew across the keyboard. Multiple windows opened. Receipts, security logs, timestamps. Hotel meeting records, he murmured. Look at this. First booking, 6 months before your mother's final hospitalization. Ilara's hand stilled, before the decline. Ken scrolled through the records, reading softly. Marcus Hale, conference suite, reservation adjusted by guest Chloe Rivers. Same billing card, same nights, multiple stays. The silence in the room thickened. John exhaled slowly. So it wasn't sudden, it was planned. Ilara's eyes didn't move from the screen. She comforted me through my mother's illness, while she was sleeping with my husband. Ken switched screens again. There's more. On one window, a recovered text thread appeared, partially deleted messages restored from Marcus's phone backup. Chloe's name glowed in pale blue. Chloe. She's too busy with the hospital. Push the prenup now. Chloe. Sell the house before she wakes up. It'll look clean. Marcus. You really think she'll sign? Chloe. She's soft, Marcus. She always has been. She doesn't fight. Ilara leaned back in her chair, a faint trace of a bitter smile forming. She was right about one thing. I didn't fight then. Priya's quiet voice cut through the moment. There's also financial movement. Chloe received 3 separate transfers from Marcus's consulting bonus account. The first one coincides with that first hotel stay. The betrayal was no longer emotional. It was systematic. Ilara closed her eyes briefly, and a flashback played in her mind. Years earlier, college, the sunlit campus library, 2 young women, Ilara and Chloe, laughing quietly. Ilara handed Chloe a folder. This internship is solid. My mom's connections can open the door for you. Chloe's eyes sparkled, gratitude bright and sincere. You're saving my life. Weeks later, Ilara's mother mentioned the scandal, someone falsifying travel reimbursements. Chloe was dismissed. Ilara defended her then. She made a mistake, she'd said, but Chloe never forgave the humiliation. That day, the seed of resentment was planted, small, buried, but alive. Back in the present, the pieces aligned like a cruel mosaic. Chloe hadn't fallen in love with Marcus. She'd chosen him. He was the weapon she needed to wound Alara. Ken switched feeds again. There's something else. A still image filled the screen. Chloe at Alara's dining table, smiling during a casual visit. Her phone was angled toward a stack of papers beside a cup of coffee. Zooming in revealed the faint outline of the Helios Holdings board meeting agenda. The header, the date, clear as day. Alara spoke quietly. That's the photo she took. She didn't even know what she was stealing. Priya's eyes widened. We cross-checked it. That exact document was emailed anonymously to Orion's rival 2 days later. But the sender IP traces back to... She hesitated. Marcus's laptop. John's jaw clenched. He used his own system? Idiot! Alara didn't move, her face unreadable. Not idiot, she said softly. Arrogant. He thought no one would ever look. The room fell into a tense silence. Finally, she turned to Priya. Lock the Helios servers. Tag every file they accessed. I want to know exactly what they tried to sell. Priya nodded and began typing. Ken leaned back, eyes narrowing. What's the plan if they actually shared something critical? Alara's answer came like steel wrapped in calm. Then we do what Helios policy dictates. She opened a document on her laptop, the old corporate handbook her mother had written. Her finger traced the highlighted line. When betrayal threatens the foundation, do not rebuild with it. Acquire the threat and bury it within your walls. Alara looked back at the frozen image of Marcus and Chloe, the lovers laughing in the hotel lobby. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Tomorrow they walk into the walls I built. A notification pinged on her laptop. Audit complete, irregularities found. Alara's eyes met the camera lens. Send me everything. Because in the morning, she wouldn't just expose them. She'd erase them. The digital clock on the wall hit 6 on AM sharp, and the Helios war room came alive. Dozens of monitors lit up, displaying charts, contracts, and glowing lines of code that mapped Orion's financial guts like a living heartbeat. At the center of it all sat Alara, hair pulled back, eyes cold with focus. Around her were the trusted few, Priya, the forensic accountant, John, the corporate attorney, and Ken, the security chief, each with coffee cups untouched. The room felt less like an office and more like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Priya, Alara said, her tone crisp. Show me everything. Priya tapped her tablet and numbers appeared across the wall-sized screen. We started the Orion audit at midnight. What we found? She hesitated, then continued. It's not small. A series of invoices filled the screen, each from companies that didn't exist. Inflated marketing payments, Priya explained. And these, she highlighted another cluster, duplicate vendor shells. They all route back to one consulting firm tied to Marcus's cousin under a different last name. John frowned. So he was using family fronts to funnel Helios's investment money before the deal even closed. Alara's face didn't move, but her fingers pressed against the table. How far back? 6 months, Priya said, right before your mother's final board session. Ken spoke next. We checked timestamps. He backdated expenses to make Orion's quarter look strong, just enough to impress your mother's negotiators. It's classic manipulation. The wall changed again. Screens showed side-by-side comparisons. Orion's fake revenue spikes mirrored against real-time Helios audit flags. The proof was undeniable. Priya looked at Alara, her voice softening. Marcus built this fraud to sell himself as a visionary. He needed Helios to bite. John folded his arms. He didn't realize Helios already belonged to the woman sitting in this room. Alara finally stood, the reflection of the data glowing against her face. Her tone turned quiet, almost gentle. He gambled with my mother's legacy to impress strangers. He thought he was hunting profit. She paused, eyes distant. A flashback came unbidden. Her mother, Eleanor Pierce, years ago in her office, firm and graceful. When wolves circle, you don't run, Eleanor had said, signing a policy draft. You buy the forest they hunt in. The memory faded, leaving Alara with a calm that looked almost dangerous. She turned back to the team. We invoke Clause 12.4 of Helios's integrity policy. Effective immediately, Orion is under internal fraud review. Notify the board. John looked up from his notes. You're converting the partnership? Not converting, Alara said. Acquiring. We'll buy Orion outright and clean the rot from the inside. The room fell silent for a beat. Then Ken nodded. Security will control access. No one enters or exits the boardroom without your approval. Alara walked toward the large window overlooking the waking city. The sun was rising, clean light cutting through the skyline like a blade. Priya broke the silence. Alara, what will you say to him when he sees you? Ilara's reflection in the glass almost smiled. Nothing, she said. He'll understand when the papers hit the table. John checked his watch. Board seated for 9, he reminded her softly. Are you sure you want to be the one to walk in? She turned toward him, her voice low and steady. I was born in that room. She reached for her coat, slid her mother's gold pen into her pocket, and glanced once at the screen. Marcus's smiling photo from a company newsletter. Her eyes hardened. Let's make sure he's smiling when I walk in. As she left the room, Ken's monitor pinged, an alert flashing red. He frowned. Wait, someone just accessed the Orion network again. This time, from inside Helios. The camera feed froze on Alara's unreadable face as the alarm light blinked across the wall. The hallway outside the Helios boardroom was a corridor of glass and sunlight. At 8:59 a.m., the air itself seemed to hum. Every surface gleamed, polished floors, steel fixtures, flawless windows looking out over a city that had no idea it was about to witness the quietest, sharpest revenge in corporate history. Alara stood perfectly still at the end of the hall. Her reflection on the glass wall looked nothing like the woman Marcus had thrown out weeks ago. Her black suit was tailored and exact, her mother's gold pen clipped to her jacket pocket. No tears, no tremble, just command. Through the glass, she could see Marcus Hale seated at the head of the boardroom table, performing confidence for an audience that didn't truly respect him. His voice carried faintly through the walls. Smooth, rehearsed, dripping arrogance. Ladies and gentlemen, he said to the assembled Helios and Orion executives, this partnership will mark the beginning of a new age for both companies. I've always said Helios has potential, but with Orion's innovation, we'll turn that potential into power. Beside him sat Chloe Rivers, glowing in pale pink, flipping through her speaking notes. She leaned toward Marcus with that too-practiced smile. You look perfect, she whispered. Marcus smirked. I always do. Around the table, a dozen Helios executives exchanged polite looks, trying not to show their discomfort. They didn't know yet. Only a handful of them had been informed that the chairwoman herself would be arriving to lead the signing. A young assistant entered quietly. Everyone, please take your seats, she announced. The chairwoman is on her way. The words sliced through the room like a bell. Marcus straightened his tie. Chairwoman? He laughed under his breath. Helios still running that matriarch act, huh? Must be some token old name on the paperwork. Chloe chuckled softly, though her eyes darted toward the door. Relax, she murmured. Whoever she is, she signs, you shake hands, we celebrate. Outside, Alara took one last deep breath. She could almost hear her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Walk in slow. Power doesn't rush. She nodded once to Ken, who stood by the glass doors in a black suit, now functioning as security detail. He gave a subtle signal. Everything was ready. At 9 a.m. sharp, the assistant's voice carried again, firm and clear. Please stand for the chairwoman of Helios Holdings. Chairs scraped back. The room shifted from chatter to tension. The double glass doors opened. Alara Hale stepped in. No music, no announcement beyond the title, just the sound of heels against marble. Every face turned toward her. Every expression froze. Marcus blinked once, twice. For a full 3 seconds, he didn't breathe. Alara, his voice cracked. What are you doing here? Chloe's lips parted slightly, color draining from her face. The papers in her hand trembled. Alara said nothing. She walked slowly to the head of the table, her gaze steady. The executives, once confused, were now realizing the impossible truth. The name on every corporate document, the one Marcus had mocked as an invisible relic, belonged to the woman now standing before them. She stopped beside Marcus, who had half risen from his chair. "Please," she said quietly, "stay seated." He sank back down, unable to look away. Ilara placed a thick folder on the table, embossed with the Helios crest. "Before we sign," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "there's an addendum." She opened the folder, sliding a single sheet toward him. The paper rustled like thunder in the silence. "This," she continued, "contains findings from an internal audit. Vendor inconsistencies, duplicate accounts, falsified invoices, your signature on all of them." Marcus's eyes darted across the page, panic blooming behind his composure. You can't possibly—" Ilara lifted her mother's gold pen, uncapped it with a quiet click, and placed it beside the paper. "This is the only pen that matters today," she said softly. Every camera in the room recorded his silence. Every whisper of her authority filled the space he used to own. Ilara finally met his gaze. "You wanted Helios to crawl to your terms, remember? I'm here to make sure that happens, just not the way you imagine." Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chloe's voice broke through instead, weak, trembling. "Ilara, wait. This is all a misunderstanding." Ilara didn't even look at her. "Security," she said. Ken stepped forward from the doorway. The executive stared, unsure whether to breathe or watch. Ilara turned a page in the folder. Clause 12.4 of the Helios Integrity Policy. When a counterparty negotiator is under fraud review, Helios may convert the partnership into an acquisition to protect shareholders. Marcus's face drained of color. What are you saying?" Ilara's voice was smooth as glass. "I'm saying, Marcus, Helios isn't partnering with Orion. We're buying it." The room erupted, voices, whispers, disbelief. Ilara's eyes stayed locked on his. "You built your kingdom on lies," she said quietly. "I built mine on truth. Let's see which one lasts." Marcus's hand trembled over the document. John's voice echoed from the speakerphone. "Chairwoman, the legal team's ready." Ilara didn't blink. "Good. Then let's begin." As she reached for the pen, Ken's phone buzzed with an urgent alert, unauthorized media presence outside the boardroom. The first headline already uploaded: "Breaking, CEO Marcus Hale faces fraud allegations during $900 million Helios deal." Ilara's eyes flicked toward the window. The world was already watching. The tension in the Helios boardroom could have been cut with a knife. The panoramic windows poured sunlight across the long glass table, illuminating the piles of contracts and cameras now discreetly recording every angle. Marcus sat stiffly, trying to rebuild his composure. Sweat glistened along his collar despite the icy air. Chloe sat beside him, her manicured fingers trembling as she flipped the same page back and forth in her binder. The room had grown unbearably still. At the head of the table, Ilara stood, shoulders square, voice calm. Her mother's gold pen gleamed in her hand like a symbol of judgment. "Before we continue," she began, "let's confirm the transaction value." She nodded toward Priya, who appeared on the large screen beside them from Helios headquarters. Priya's voice was steady. "The final valuation, $900 million. A collective murmur rippled through the room. Marcus straightened, his ego reviving for a heartbeat. "That's right," he said quickly, seizing the moment. $900 million. A new chapter for both our companies. This is what I've been fighting for." Ilara's hand rose gently, stopping him mid-sentence. "You're right about one thing," she said softly. "This is a new chapter. Just not the one you expected." The lights dimmed slightly as Ken, standing near the back, activated the digital projector. The screen behind Ilara filled with documents, account ledgers, and signature trails. Ilara turned to the audience. "Before we finalize this transaction, I am obligated by Helios corporate policy to disclose findings from a recent audit. These findings concern irregularities originating from Orion's executive accounts." Marcus's confidence wavered. "Irregularities?" he scoffed, forcing a laugh. "Helios has no jurisdiction." She tapped the remote, and his voice cut off as the next slide appeared. A financial spreadsheet highlighting fraudulent transactions. "This," Ilara said, "is a series of inflated marketing invoices tied to non-existent vendors, each authorized under your digital signature, Marcus Hale." Gas filled the room. Chloe's eyes darted to Marcus. Elara continued, voice even, controlled. Further investigation shows duplicate payments routed through a consulting firm owned by your cousin. Cross-matching timestamps reveal that you backdated expenses to falsify Orion's quarterly performance, just before pitching this very deal. Marcus went pale. His mouth opened, but Elara didn't let him speak. Clause 12.4 of Helios's counterparty integrity policy states, if a negotiating partner is found to have engaged in fraudulent activity that threatens shareholder trust, Helios Holdings reserves the right to convert any active partnership into a full acquisition. She paused to let the words settle. Effective immediately, we are converting this transaction. Helios Holdings will acquire Orion Group in full. Shock tore through the room. Board members whispered. Chloe's binder slipped from her trembling hands. Marcus looked as though the air had left his lungs. That's not legal, he snapped, voice rising. You can't do that. Elara didn't flinch. It's already done. She slid a sleek USB drive across the table toward Priya's remote image. This contains every transaction record, backed by timestamps, bank trails, and digital verifications. Priya nodded on the screen. Confirmed. Legal review is complete. Orion executives who complied with the audit will retain their positions. Those who didn't, she hesitated, will be reported to the authorities. Elara turned her gaze directly to Marcus. Marcus Hale, as acting CEO of Orion, you are hereby terminated for cause, effective immediately. Security stepped forward. Marcus's face contorted between fury and disbelief. Elara, you can't. After everything I built for you, she cut in, voice soft but slicing. You didn't build anything for me. You stole from my mother's legacy and from the people who trusted you. Then, without looking at Chloe, she added, Chloe Hart, you will be contacted regarding misappropriated property and conspiracy to defraud. Chloe stood abruptly. Elara, please, I didn't know. Marcus told me. Elara didn't even blink. You told him how to hurt me, Chloe. That's what you did. You just never expected I'd be watching. Marcus shoved his chair back, standing so fast it toppled behind him. You'll regret this, he shouted. You think money and a board title make you untouchable? You're nothing without me. Elara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm, controlled, every word a blade. You threw out your wife and daughters because you thought they were a burden. You betrayed your best friend for greed. You mocked my grief, Marcus. She slid one last document toward him, his own signed fraud admission, compiled from his emails. I didn't need to trap you, she said quietly. You did that yourself. The cameras in the room caught everything. The arrogance, the unraveling, the slow collapse of a man who thought he was invincible. Marcus's anger cracked into desperation. Elara, please. Think of the girls, he said, voice breaking. The room went still again. Every head turned toward her. Elara didn't move for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her words were quiet enough to make everyone lean closer. I am thinking of them, she said. That's why you're leaving with nothing. Security stepped in. Marcus tried to speak again, but his voice was drowned by the sound of his own chair scraping across the floor. Chloe followed, her eyes red, her future dissolving in the reflection of the glass walls. Elara turned to the Helios team. Proceed with the acquisition, she instructed calmly. Let's finish what my mother started. As she gathered the papers, a low chime from Ken's phone broke the silence. He frowned at the message. Elara, he said carefully, you need to see this. Marcus isn't heading downstairs. He's talking to someone in the hallway. He's not alone. Elara looked up slowly, her expression unreadable. Then he hasn't learned yet, she murmured. Good. Let's teach him how endings work. The hallway outside the Helios boardroom was suddenly quiet after the storm inside. The echo of Marcus's shouting still lingered faintly, like smoke after a fire. The glass walls shimmered with morning light, but the space between Elara and Marcus felt cold, airless, like the final stretch before a verdict. Security had escorted Chloe down the opposite corridor, her protests fading with distance. Now only Marcus Hale remained, his tie crooked, his eyes red with rage and disbelief. Elara, he said, voice cracking, you can't just walk away like this. You can't take everything from me. Ilara stood calm, arms at her sides. Her mother's gold pen glinted in her hand. I didn't take anything, Marcus. You gave it away. You just didn't realize it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as though they were still husband and wife sharing a secret. I didn't know you owned Helios. No one did. You hid it from me. Her eyes lifted, steady and unflinching. You never asked what I did at night, she said quietly. You assumed I was small because I stayed silent. You assumed wrong. He opened his mouth, but she kept speaking, calm, deliberate. While you were chasing applause, I was studying my mother's playbooks. Every contract, every boardroom fight. You thought grief made me weak. It just made me invisible long enough to see who you really were. Marcus swallowed hard, looking around the empty corridor as though searching for an escape. Ilara, please, he said, his voice softening. Don't do this. Whatever this is, it's gone too far. Think about the girls. Her face didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly around the pen. I am thinking about them, she said. That's why this ends today. They need stability, not chaos. The court will see who created that chaos. His voice cracked again, half desperate, half angry. You'll turn them against me? No, she said simply. You already did that yourself the night you threw us out. He winced as if struck. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them like an open wound. Finally, Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded set of papers, the divorce documents he'd once served her. We don't have to make this ugly, he said, forcing a shaky smile. Just sign these. I'll walk away quietly. You keep your empire. I'll rebuild mine. Ilara looked down at the papers, her expression unreadable. Then she met his eyes and said softly but firmly, No. He blinked. No? I'm not signing that, she said. You threw us out when you thought we had nothing. You made it clear what my worth was to you. She raised the gold pen and turned slightly toward the boardroom door. I'm signing something else today. Marcus's breath hitched. What do you mean? She paused, her voice quiet and sharp. The final papers making the acquisition of Orion official. The company you tried to use against me. Now it belongs to me. Every file, every dollar, every mistake you made. Marcus took a small step back. You can't. I already did, she said. For a second, something human flickered in his expression, a recognition of the woman he'd underestimated. He looked at the pen in her hand, then at her calm face. You learned all this from her, didn't you? Your mother. Ilara's gaze softened for the first time. A quick flashback flickered through her mind. Her mother, Eleanor Pierce, guiding her hand across a signature line years ago. A signature can end a life, or start one, her mother had said. Know what you're writing. The memory faded. Ilara exhaled slowly, her face composed. I know exactly what I'm writing, she said. Marcus's voice broke into anger again, the last fragments of his pride clinging. This isn't justice, Ilara. It's revenge. No, she replied quietly. It's balance. For a moment he looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't the woman he dismissed months ago. She wasn't the grieving wife or the quiet mother. She was something far more dangerous, a woman who no longer needed to explain herself. Before he could say another word, the door behind her opened. Ken stepped out, calm but alert. Chairwoman, he said, we have a situation. The press has gathered outside. They know about the deal and the fraud. Marcus's eyes widened. The press? Ilara didn't look at him. She handed her pen to Ken. Good, she said softly. Let them in. Ken nodded and opened the outer doors. A flood of flashing lights and camera shutters filled the hallway. Marcus flinched at the sound. Ilara stood still, face serene in the glare. And as the reporters shouted her name, she knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of hers. The top floor of Helios Holdings glowed with afternoon sunlight. The storm had passed. Glass walls shimmered, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond them. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and new paper. Clean, final, alive. Ilara sat at her mother's old desk, now hers, the surface immaculate except for one folder and one pen, the same gold pen that had witnessed both endings and beginnings. Across the room, Mia and Ava, her 5-year-old twins, sat at a small round table near the window. Crayons rolled across the glass surface as they colored pictures of houses and smiling suns. Their laughter filled the room like a soft melody, ordinary, healing. The television on the wall was muted, but the bold red banner across the screen said everything. Breaking news. Helios acquires Orion Group in $900 million takeover fraud. Probe names former executive Marcus Hale. Ilara watched the headline for a moment, her expression unreadable. John Everett, her mother's longtime attorney, entered the room with calm professionalism. He set a document on her desk. "It's official," he said. "The asset freeze was approved. Civil suits are moving forward. Chloe Hart is cooperating in the data theft inquiry." Ilara nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "Let her cooperate. She'll need it." John hesitated. "And Marcus?" "He's already made bail," John replied. "But every account he touched is locked. He won't rebuild easily." A quiet moment settled between them. For the first time in weeks, Ilara allowed herself to breathe fully. She turned the muted television off and reached into the drawer. Inside was an old photo frame, the family picture that used to sit by her bed. She looked at it for a long moment. Marcus's smiling face seemed foreign now, a ghost of a man who never really knew her. She opened the frame gently, removed the photo, and placed it face down in the drawer. Then from her bag she took out a new picture, taken that morning by Ken when the twins had rushed into her office after the press conference. It was of her and the girls, sunlight spilling over their faces, laughter genuine and free. She placed it in the frame, centered it carefully, and set it beside the gold pen. The act was simple, but it was the quiet rewriting of her story. John smiled faintly. "Your mother would be proud," he said. Ilara met his eyes. "She taught me to finish what she started." She opened the final folder on the desk, the last legal page of the Orion acquisition. Not a divorce decree, not an ending born from weakness. This was control, clarity, and legacy. She took the gold pen in her hand and signed her name with steady grace. Her voice was soft but certain, almost like a whisper carried from the past. "He took my home, so I took his company. Grief didn't make me weak, it made me precise." She set the pen down gently, exhaling as though releasing years of silence. At the side table, Mia looked up, curious. "Mom," she asked quietly, "are we safe now?" Ilara smiled, warm, real, full of something deeper than victory. "Completely," she said. The twins returned to their drawings, giggling. Outside, the sun caught the glass tower just right, turning it into a mirror of gold. The camera panned back to Ilara as the office door opened again. Ken Douglas, the head of security, stepped inside with a new folder tucked under his arm. He placed it on her desk. The label read, "Whistleblowers, Internal Review." Ilara glanced at it, then at him. He smiled knowingly. "Looks like Helios isn't the only company with secrets." Ilara's fingers brushed the folder edge, but she didn't open it yet. Her eyes moved to her daughters, then to the new family photo on her desk. For now, she thought, the empire is safe. The camera lingered on her reflection in the window, strong, centered, unbreakable, before fading to black. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it signs its name quietly and changes everything. If you felt the power of Ilara's journey, her quiet revenge, her hidden strength, her rebirth, share this story, because somewhere, someone still believes silence means weakness. Show them it doesn't.